Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm delighted we're going to be speaking to Amelia Boone, who is probably the world's most decorated obstacle racer. She is a 3-time winner of the world's toughest mudder, Spartan Race World Champion in 2013, Spartan Race Point Series Champion in 2013 and 2015, a 3-time death race finisher. It's going to be absolutely awesome. Before we get on with this awesome episode with Amelia Boone, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to all of my patrons out there. You guys are absolutely awesome. You're making such a massive difference. I can't honestly thank you enough. So I just want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons who have signed up in November and December. So Lindsay Henderson, Gina Christensen, Bethan Taylor, Claire Williams, Anne Ziegler, Iona McKenzie, Angela Walsh, Selena McCall. You guys are all absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for becoming a patron and supporting the podcast. I'm getting very, very close to when the podcast won't actually be losing me money every time I produce this and put the content out. So I massively appreciate your support. If you want to come and support the podcast and become a patron, you can donate anything from $2 up to $10 a month. Every single little bit counts. All of the information is on the website at toughgirlchallenges.com. It's also in the show notes of every episode. Please do go and check out Patreon and become an awesome sponsor. Thank you so much. Let's get on with the show. Hi, Amelia.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's super awesome. It's super excited to get you on. Where are you based at the moment? Where are you living?
Well, I'm currently based in San Jose in California. So I've been there for about a year. Before that, I was living in Chicago for about 6 years. So moved out west and no regrets. It's been great. So.
Oh, I have to say, I'm so jealous. Like California at the moment just sounds amazing. Just the thought of all that sunshine. That must be so good.
Yeah.
It must be so good for all of your trading. I can see why you moved from Chicago to California.
Yeah, no, it's been really great. I mean, there are a number of factors that went into it. I really moved actually for work, but it definitely for me, you know, given that I love running the mountains and things like that, it's kind of Chicago's kind of a tough place to be to do that. So California is much more conducive.
Oh, God, definitely. It just sounds such an idyllic lifestyle. But I mean, what I'd love you to do is just maybe introduce yourself and just tell everyone a little bit more about you.
Yeah. So this is always a funny question for me because I never really know how to introduce myself. Because I say, so I'm Amelia Boone and I'm an attorney. I'm a full-time attorney, but I'm also kind of a full-time obstacle racer and endurance athlete. So I kind of happened onto obstacle racing later on in my life. Well, not late. I mean, I'm 33, but I didn't have the traditional athletic route growing up. And so I went to college, I went to law school, started out in the professional world, and then happened onto this obstacle racing whole thing about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And I've been very fortunate to be successful at it. So I kind of juggle the two at this point.
No, that's awesome. But let's just go back a little bit to when you were growing up. So you mentioned that you were you sporty growing up? Were you into the outdoors?
I was, I absolutely was. I say that I don't have a traditional athletic route. I guess I don't have the traditional, I didn't run cross country in college, which seems to be like the typical prototype of somebody that's now into like ultra running or obstacle racing. They were runners in college or some type of athletes. I grew up in Oregon, and we were always outside. I played a lot of team sports growing up, and I was just constantly bouncing from one practice to another. So soccer, softball. My main sport was actually softball. I was a pitcher in fast pitch, and so I was always on the go and always moving. And I think that what people noticed, or my parents noticed, was that I just had this engine. I wasn't the best at anything. I was just pretty good at everything, but I could just play games upon games upon games and just not tire out. And so I look back now and people are like, well, how do you think you're successful at this endurance stuff? And I'm like, well, I think from a very young age, I've just kind of had that engine, that was there. So, but, I played through high school and I think just kind of ended up burning myself out. Never really had, dreams or aspirations. I was never frankly good enough at any of the sports to play in college. So just shoved it to the side and thought that was going to be the end of athletics in my life. Little did I know.
I mean, when I finished university or in college and then started in like the corporate world, I used to work in banking. Like sports for me just totally dropped off the radar. All I was doing was just working like crazy hours. How did you start to reintroduce sports into your life, like when you were in the corporate world after college, or how did it come about?
Yeah, so I think even throughout college, throughout law school, I always, went to the gym or stayed in shape or worked out just because that was what I was told that you did. You go to the gym for 30 minutes a day or something and move your body and do whatever, and just kind of as a stress release. And I would go and run a few miles a few times a week, but nothing ever really, and I never kept track of anything, and I was never competing in anything. It was just to kind of have an outlet, for the stress. And so I did that throughout college, and throughout law school. And it was when I started as a first year associate at, one of the largest law firms in the world. And I was kind of looking around. I was like, okay, I've gotten here. Like I did my thing in college. I did my thing in law school. I got to like the best firm, one of the top firms in the world. And here I am. What's next? And so at that point, I think I started, as much as like professionally it was fulfilling and I enjoyed working and I enjoyed the subject matter. I kind of wanted a new outlet. And that's where it was actually a coworker that came up to me and was like, have you heard of this thing called Tough Mudder? I was like, no, what is it? And I remember sitting there in my office and we looked it up online, and there was one coming up in Wisconsin that summer. And I go, yes, this is what I want to do. And I spent the next like few months like training for that, because I'd never run more than like 10 miles in my life, I think, consecutively, because I'd never run a road race. I'd never done any of that. And then we went out and did that. And they were all like, okay, check that off the bucket list. And my immediate thought was, what can I do next? When's the next one? And that's how it started. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think when I was going to the gym and not really having like a purpose or a goal or not trained towards anything, I always used to struggle with training, because it was just like, you get on the treadmill, I lift a few weights, and it was just quite, I found it almost quite frustrating. So tell us a bit more about the Tough Mudder. Like, how long was the race? What was the first race like?
So the first, it was 10 miles, and it was up on a kind of a ski hill in Wisconsin. And I immediately, like, the gun went off. Everyone goes charging down this mountain, or charging down this like slope. You go downhill, and then they immediately take you back up and start running up the hill. And I noticed everyone around me started walking, and I was like, what is going on? Like, why, everyone's out of breath. And I'm just like running up this hill, like, come on, guys, let's go. And I just immediately, I looked at my coworkers and they're like, yeah, go ahead. They knew that I was like rearing to go, and it was incredible, because I think for me, I had always shied away from just like run. I didn't understand why anyone would go out and like pay money to run a 5K, where I was like, you could just go out and run 3 miles on your own. Like, why would you do that? But for me, I was like, it's not just running. You'd run a little bit, and then you would, hop over a wall or crawl under barbed wire. And it was constantly changing. And that to me was so cool, because and when I finished, like, you were utterly exhausted. Like, every part of your body was taxed. Upper body, lower body, just all over sore. And I never really felt that type. Well, I had felt that type of accomplishment, but back, in the days of when I was growing up and playing 3 or 4 soccer matches in a day, and just that utter sheer exhaustion at the end of something. And I loved that. So I want to say it was only 10 miles, but I finished that. And then I remember being like, all right, let's keep doing this. What's the longer one? What's the next one? How can we make this more gnarly? So, yeah.
What was because I mean, you know, when people do like the obstacle course races, there's normally like that for their first obstacle course race, there's something which is like, oh God, I've got to face this fear. What was that obstacle on your first race which you were like really worried about or scared about, or did you did not have that fear because it was the unknown?
So this is actually really funny. So I spent the entire few months leading up to it, training it, trying to be able to do a single pull-up. I had never been able to do a pull-up in my life. And I just had I had no idea how to go about training to even be strong like that. And so I was really scared. They have this obstacle called Funky Monkey, which is monkey bars. And basically it's kind of like monkey bars that go up and go down now. And it's funny because 5-6 years later now I look at that and this is an obstacle that I do in every single race, like without a hitch. And I remember getting 2 or 3 bars into Funky Monkey and falling off because I didn't have the upper body strength. And I had spent like 3 months trying to be able to train specifically for this and just failed miserably at it. And I think that was actually very eye-opening for me and being like, really, Amelia? Like, you used to do monkey bars all the time as a kid and you can't even carry your own body weight over those. So everyone else had the fear of like the electricity and things like that. And for me, it was like this fear of this utter failure on these monkey bars, which is exactly what I did, was fall off of them. So I remember that vividly.
But I have to say, I mean, I don't know what it is, but I mean, I remember, I think it was like 2 years ago, my goal was to do 1 pull-up. And I think it took me about 3 months to be able to do 1 pull-up. And I think it's just because I think as women mostly, they either end up doing loads of cardio or they do all of leg stuff because they don't want to get bulky, they don't want to get too big. But I have to say, for me, it's being able to manipulate like my own body weight. I just feel really like powerful and I'm like, yeah, oh my God, I could like pull myself up. So anybody who's listening who can't do a pull-up, put it on your goal list, get out there and get training because it is totally worth it.
So, it's phenomenal. Yeah. It's one of those feelings I remember the first time. And now, I can bang out sets of like 10 to 15, no problem. But it was just getting that first one and you're like, oh, I can do this. And so, yeah.
Once you've got the first one, the only way is up until you are banging out sets of 10 and 15.
Yeah.
So you did the 10 mile obstacle race. Yeah. You faced these challenges. What was the next sort of gnarly event that you ended up doing?
So this is funny. This was 2011. This is like the first full year of Tough Mudder. And I did the course in July of 2011, this 10-mile one. And then I get an email the following day that's like, you thought that was fun? Sign up for the first inaugural World's Toughest Mudder, which was, and this is how they pitched it to people, a 24-hour race in New Jersey in December, where you run as many laps as you can of a 10-mile Tough Mudder course in 24 hours. And I just done my first 10-mile race ever. And I see that email and I go, yes, that's it. I am doing that. I had no business, no right. I never even stayed awake for 24 hours, actually, to think that I could run around in circles for 24 hours in New Jersey in December. But I signed up and I absolutely the most impulsive decision that I've ever made in my life, and probably the best decision I've ever made in my life, because that was what really set everything else into motion. But it's funny looking at that time, and I have no idea what possessed me to think that I could go from running like a 10-mile race to then doing that on repeat for 24 hours. So that was the next thing. Never really took the easy way into things, I guess,
But isn't it amazing how it's one decision in your life, like pressing that email button, pressing that submit button, I mean, I remember I did a race called the Marathon des Sables and signing up for it, and the fear that was going through my body was absolutely crazy. I mean, can you almost remember back to what made you do it? Do you know like where it came from, or what possessed you just to say, do you know what, I am gonna go for this 24-hour race in the middle of December? And yeah, what pushed you over the edge to say yes?
I think it was that need, kind of like the need to find something else, to find meaning, or to like find a new challenge, and really just tackle something and push myself, because I was living in downtown Chicago. I was doing the corporate thing, and I was fitting into that mold that I'd always pictured myself doing my entire life. And all of a sudden it wasn't as, I don't want to say it wasn't as fulfilling, but I needed something to like set myself apart, or something to, really feel alive in a lot of ways. And so I think almost when I signed up, I always thought to myself, I'm like, you don't have to signing up doesn't mean you have to do it. You can always back out, Amelia. You don't have to do this. So I kind of like gave myself an outlet, or an out, if push came to shove. But for somebody like me, I think, who's been extremely risk adverse her entire life, was a very uncharacteristic decision, and I still can't really wrap my brain around it. But, it led to me then meeting all of these other crazy people that were all going to do this, and then getting pulled into that world. And then that led me to signing up for my first death race, and doing all of these, endurance events that I never would have done otherwise. So, I don't know. Things happen in strange ways.
They do, absolutely. So you pretty much given yourself 5 months to go before the next race. How did your training change? And did you get with a personal trainer, or was it just you doing your own thing? Did you use a program, or what did you do?
Yeah, I actually really didn't do anything different. I think I started running more, doing some more endurance, and I still was trying feebly to do pull-ups and to do that kind of stuff, and was just doing my own thing. And I realized actually that first World's Toughest Mudder that I was woefully underprepared. I was fine in like the endurance and the running, but still the upper body strength. So it wasn't actually until after that, when I, still was struggling with a little bit better with the monkey bars, but still not great. It wasn't until after that where I was like, okay, I have to get serious about this. And that's when I actually turned to CrossFit. And that's when I was really like developed a lot of strength, and was actually really finally able to manipulate my body weight and be successful at stuff. Cause I think that for those first 24 hours, I realized I'm like, whoa, like I can't just like go to the gym, run on the treadmill, and like do a little bit of circuit training and think that I'm going to be able to make any progress here. So.
Absolutely. So take us back to that 24 hours. I mean, I always say what was the low point during that race? Was there one low point? Was it a constant low point?
Yeah. Oh God. So anyone that was there were a very small crew of us that were there. There were, I think, about 900 people showed up for that first World's Toughest Mudder. There were 13 finishers. I was one of the 13 finishers. So, what happened was, this was December like 17th and 18th in New Jersey. The temperatures started at 10 a.m. Saturday morning, went to 10 a.m. Sunday morning, and it dipped into like the teens at night. And we were constantly in and out of water. So you jump off, you're swimming in this little lake, and you're in and out of like these mud pits, and the water started freezing over at points. So I will never forget, it was probably about 3 a.m. and there were, I think, a good 90% of people quit after the first lap. Literally the first 10 miles, people were done. They were hypothermic. They were just like, nope, not doing this. This is dumb. And And I almost quit myself until I actually connected with one of my friends who had also come out, and we together did the rest of the race at a very slow, painful rate. But there was one point, it was about 3 a.m. and we were wading through this water and this obstacle called Jesus Walks, which was basically about a waist deep water. And then there would be random holes that would like all of a sudden get really deep and you'd like fall in. And just breaking through the ice, there was a sheet of ice that had formed over the top. And I remember picking up a piece of ice and just laughing hysterically and turning to my friend Joel, who was with me, and be like, can you believe we're doing this right now? Like, what in the world is going on? And that was it was the coldest I had ever been in my life. And it was probably the low point, but it was also the point that I look back on at that moment and be like that's where everything clicked for me, that this was what I was meant to do. So it's weird. It was in many ways a very constant low point, but knowing that like if I could get through that, there was so much out there that I could do and accomplish. So
I mean, oh God, absolutely. I mean, I am not one for the cold. Like, it's the one thing that I absolutely hate. I can think of the rest. But 900 starters, 30 finishers. I mean, I mean, when people are dropping out left, right, and centre, you know, that this is stupid, this is cold, you know, you're breaking ice. Did your friend Joel carry on with you, or did he end up dropping out?
Yeah, no. So we carried on together. And that was by far, it was the only way that I would have done it. I never would have been able to do it on my own and by myself. And I think that's one thing that people have realized about World's Toughest Mudder over these years. The conditions have never been as bad as they were that first year. But that having other people with you, that it's just as much, even though it was technically a race, it's just as much as a community event as it is a race. And I think you see that in any race that's multi-day or a long period of ultra, like people, the community spirit out there, it's like, it's weird. It's a race, but it's not really a race because everyone's out there like helping out everyone else out. And it's just such a magical shared suffering that I think really draws people and binds people together. So
no, absolutely. I mean, one thing I'd be interested in is just almost talking a little bit about the mental side of things, maybe from the perspective of your first race, what you learnt mentally, and then how that's almost changed over the years as you've gone on to do, you know, 50 plus more races. So on that first race, what do you think you learnt most about yourself in terms of like that mental resilience?
Yeah. I think the first thing that I learned, that what I realized is how easy it is to get overwhelmed at a really, really long race and a really long event. And so if I looked at the entire span, I remember completing that first lap and being like, I still have 22 more hours to go of this. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm never going to make it. But then I realized, and this through the course of the night when I was running with Joel, is that if we just broke it down, like obstacle by obstacle, just get to this next obstacle, just get to this next lap, it mentally became so much easier to not look at the clock, to not think about the elapse of time. So it's like compartmentalizing into little chunks. And that's something that I've taken with me to every single race, and especially the longer the race gets. But even in the standard, 10, 12 mile Spartan races that I run, on a monthly basis, is that it's not about the entire race. It's just at like the task at hand, the next few minutes. And that to me has been the best like mental tactic or trick or coping ability to deal with these things, as opposed to getting overwhelmed, because it's very easy to look at the entire picture and just want to quit because you think there's no way. But if you just look, 5 minutes down the road and just get through that next 5 minutes, get through the next 5 minutes after that, it's much, much easier.
And mentally for you, has it got easier over the years when you come to these races, or is there still like an element of fear before you start out?
It's interesting because I think sometimes it goes both ways. I think there's a lot to be said for the naivete and the ignorance before giving into something that you have no idea what's going on. When, because, for instance, there are certain things that get worse the more times that you do them. So there was this obstacle called electric eel, where you basically are crawling under live electric wires and getting hit in the head. And the first time I ever did that, I was like, wow, that sucks. But you get through it. And then the next year coming back to that, the fear, because I know how painful it's going to be, makes it 10 times worse. So there's something to be said sometimes for just total ignorance and beginner's luck and just going out there and being like, la, 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 la. So you build confidence through a lot of these races, because you know that you've been there before, but you also can mentally psych yourself out because you also know how dark and how tough it can get out there. Whereas when you come in without that knowledge, it's almost kind of freeing, I guess.
God, absolutely. When it does get really dark and it's tough and it's brutal conditions, and you're breaking it down stage by stage by stage, but when you are in those dark places, what are the other mental tips and tricks that you have up your sleeve that you use to get you through those really tough times?
Yeah. I honestly, so one of my big things is I sing to myself, and that's kind of unique. I actually have a background in music. When I stopped playing sports, I actually turned mostly to musical theater. So I would, and I do this to the day or still to this day, I have a song for almost every race that I go into. And that song is something that I kind of replay in my mind and sing to myself, because obstacle racing, you don't wear headphones because you can't, you're in and out of water. Ultra running, I'll sometimes will have music in there, but it's almost like this distraction technique and almost a meditation for me to like sing the lyrics over and over and over in my head. And at some points, literally, to make sure that I am like still mentally with it, to kind of check in to see if I could still remember lyrics to songs. So that's always been very helpful for me. And then also I try, when I get into really dark moments during races, I try to focus externally on the other people around me. So if I have other competitors around me, trying to chat them up, trying to, and that's not to try and like take away from them, but to just be like, hey, what's your name? How you doing? Blah, 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 blah. Like trying to figure out, hear other people's stories, because you're sharing a long time out there on the course with them. Or if no one's around, talk to the volunteers. The volunteers at places are always so fantastic and so underappreciated. So I think that those are like two of the things that I really do that help me to kind of get over myself, to get out of my head and through those low points.
Absolutely. And what's been one of your favorite songs, which probably after doing a race, you're like, actually, I never want to hear that song again?
Oh my God. So in 2012 in World's Toughest Mudder, it was right around the time that Macklemore's Thrift Shop came out. And I adored the song at the time. And I literally sang that over and over in my head for 24 hours. And I can't, to this day, I can't listen to that song without like all of those memories flooding back at like totally random times. So yeah, it's one of those things that I actually don't ever listen to it because I just can't.
Oh, no, I totally get that. And I love the chatting up the guys as well. I know a lot of females who, because I think it's when obstacle racing first started out. I mean, was there many women doing racing like this when you first started, or were you one of the few?
Not at all. I mean, I think that if like 1,000 or so people that would do World's Toughest Mudder, it was less than 100 women. So it was 90% dudes. In the shorter courses, it was closer to 50-50. But what's so funny, World's Toughest Mudder, you run the thing mostly in a wetsuit. And in a wetsuit, everyone looks the same. So in the first year that I won World's Toughest Mudder, I would be running by these guys in the middle of the night, and they'd be like, "Keep it up, dude. You're doing great," or "Keep it up, brother," or things like that. And I'd turn around and be like, "Thanks." And they're like, "Oh, sorry. Good job, girl. Good job, lady." Just because they assumed some person was running by them in the middle of the night, and they assumed it was a dude because we all look the same in a wetsuit. So it's definitely, it was very kind of an empowering experience. But yeah, we still struggle with these ultra long events, and that it's mainly men. Though I found more and more they're way, way, way supportive and love seeing the women out there. So
I was going to ask, do you think it's changed much, when you started, from 5 years ago to where it is now?
Mm-hmm.
Are you finding that there's more women? Because I think, like the longer the distances, the more even men and women get, especially when it comes to ultra races.
Right.
So I was just wondering, are you finding there's more and more women entering now and it's starting to even out, or is there still more swung towards the males?
It's still, for the longer events, you're right that women and men tend to even out. That, when in my super long events, I actually place higher overall because I do better at longer distances, and then overall women typically do better, but there's still a very disparate number. So I think this past year, World's Toughest Mudder, it was maybe 15 or 20% women. So it's increased, but it's still very, very small. And I don't understand. It's kind of counterintuitive to me because women typically do better at the longer distance events, but there's still not as many women entering them. Though we're starting to see that change, and I'm doing everything that even though it means more competition for me, anything that I can do to get more women out there, I love it. I think that it's something that's very, very empowering and awesome to see. So things are moving in the right direction, but just not quickly enough, I guess.
Yeah. I think that word empowering, I think when women do go out, and whether it's they run their first 5K, their half marathon, ultra distance, a Tough Mudder, a Spartan, or whatever, I think it helps to build this like inner self-confidence. And I was just wondering, how did doing races like the World's Toughest Mudder and the Spartan races, etc., how did winning them and completing them, how did that help with like your work life, with your work? Did it give you added self-confidence or added belief? I don't know if you were lacking in that or not, or did it aid you in your career as well?
Yeah, what's interesting is that also in my career, my field, a very male-dominated field as well. Just large law firms tend to be overwhelmingly male, and especially as you move up the ranks. So I think for me, it's been a boost in just knowing that I can get through hard times, and I can get through things that I wasn't quite sure that I would be able to otherwise. What's interesting is that I don't really know if that the confidence that I have in the race course always carries over as like professionally, because I think that sometimes I still struggle with falling into the trap of like underestimating my abilities in my professional life. And I've always like semi struggled with that, but the racing has helped for sure. And I try and carry that over, but it's one of those things. It's not a perfect match. So I'm not going to say, yes, it absolutely, did everything and made me a superstar attorney and blah, 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 blah. But it's having that extra kind of motivation confidence when you have to dig down deep, and knowing that for me, if I'm like, all right, I have to put my nose to the grindstone and get this done at work, like I can get it done. I'm not worried about it. Like work doesn't stress me out. I think it used to before, because I know that I'm competent and can handle it. So that's definitely something that I think is carried over.
No, definitely. I mean, you're smashing your career, you're smashing it in obstacle course racing, and you're pretty much, to me, I was looking on your website and seeing all the races that you've done throughout the years, and it's an incredible lineup of, just the sheer number of races that you've done. And you're probably training like a professional athlete while holding down a full-time job, which I'm imagining is not 9 to 5, and at 5 o'clock it switches off. So I suppose the question is, which you probably get asked all the time, is, but how do you balance that? How do you fit it all in?
Yeah, it's I have to say that I think people can do like two things really well in life. And so for me, it's professional, it's working and training. And so I have to be totally honest that it doesn't leave a lot of time for anything else. And so there are certain things that kind of like fall by the wayside. My house is a mess, for instance. I can't really cook. Don't really have any of those abilities. But for me, it's all about being flexible and figuring out when you do have the free time where training is going to work best for you. And so for me, that's always been early in the mornings. I know my clients aren't going to be looking for me at 4 or 5 a.m. So if I get my training and if I fit it in then I don't have to worry about, if I have to stay late at work that day, whether or not my training is going to like get compromised. Because that's the thing, stuff happens during the day, and you're right. I'm not off at 5 o'clock. And things are kind of ebb and flow. So for anyone that is trying to do both, juggle, and that's for most people, like most people don't have the luxury of being a full-time athlete. So I always say, like, figure out in your schedule where you have flexibility, and where your commitments are going to be the least on a day-to-day basis. And that's where you fit in your training. And also realize that you have to be flexible sometimes, is that I won't have exactly like a 4-hour block to do a super, super long training period, like during the middle of the week. So like a lot of my training has to be stacked on the weekends. If I want to get in like my really long efforts, it needs to be on those days. So it's building flexibility around that. And then it's also realizing that it's not always going to be a perfect fit, and just to do what you can. So I think that's, for me, it's part of the fun and the challenge in it. Being like, how long can I kind of like, juggle these two things and have fun with it. So,
and I've got to ask, you did say, waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning. What time do you normally wake up?
So I'm generally up around 4:30, sometimes 5 if I'm sleeping in. I've always been a morning person. And even though some people consider that middle of the night, but I feel that I love those super early morning hours. So, but then again, I turn into a pumpkin at 9 o'clock at night. So that's just my natural rhythm. So.
Oh my God, no, absolutely. Now, just a few more quick questions. I suppose one of them is, I know you've been suffering with injuries at the moment, and which must be incredibly frustrating. I know a lot of our listeners are also in that similar position where they're injured, they can't do the training that they'd normally like to do, and they're sort of riding this wave of frustration. And I was just wondering, how do you cope when you are injured, you can't train, you can't do the sports that you love? How do you manage that?
Yeah, this has been a really kind of rough year for me, but also a really good year in understanding that. So, I fractured my femur earlier this spring, and it's been a really long road. Very large stress fracture that kind of developed into more of a full fracture. And I think that what I tell people now, looking back, 9 months later, and I'm still just getting back into things, is that those first few weeks are the absolute worst. And it's going to be so overwhelming. And I felt like my world was crashing down around me, but it gets easier because what you do, and what I tell people, is find a new normal. And it's not going to be, the running 100 miles a week that you want it to be. But instead, I was very limited in what I could do for a very long time. And it was really just like I could swim with a pool buoy between my legs for like 20 minutes. And so I stayed in my routine. I maybe slept in a little bit more, but like instead of getting up and going to run in the mornings, I would get up and go to the pool, and I would do what physical therapy exercises I could do and what upper body I could do, without making the injury worse. And really just kind of embracing that and not fighting it. And also, I tell people like, I got into this like awful merry-go-round where I would beat myself up for feeling a certain way or for being so upset. And I'm just like, embrace that this sucks right now. And you're feeling this way, and don't judge it, and give yourself a period of time to like kind of mourn and grieve, and then say, all right, I gave myself 2 weeks, and then I'm like, I'm done with this pity party and I'm moving on. And so that to me has been really helpful. Everyone always says like, pick up a new hobby, develop something else. No, I mean, fine if you want to, but I actually didn't really pick up a new hobby at all. And I'm still kicking. But I think it's more of like reframing and finding a new normal and like focusing on those what little things you can do, to keep your sanity and to kind of like measure a new type of progress. So
yeah, I mean, the thing you talked about was actually like the community from the people who do the OCR races, and the people that you're meeting and that you're running side by side with. And I suppose sometimes with a lot of athletes, your identity can get very tied up in the sports that you're doing, in the training that you're doing, and when you can't do that anymore, it does impact on your identity. Have you felt that?
Yeah, I think I definitely went through this period where I was just like, who am I and what am I doing? And I realized like everything in my life was so wrapped up in this sport. And you feel that sense of loss. It really is a mourning and a grieving. And everyone's natural instinct, and it was mine as well, was to like hide my head in the sand and pretend this wasn't happening. And all I wanted to do is I unfollowed people on Instagram because it was just too painful for me to like see everyone else out on their runs. And then I realized that was kind of the easy way out. And it would be very easy to like just try and ignore everything. But this was the community that has given so much to me and has been my identity. And so come hell or high water, I'm staying involved. And so what I really forced myself to do this year was I still showed up to all the races. I was at every single race that I was supposed to be running that I instead was on crutches for. And I cheered people on. And I often went home after those races and I sat and I cried and that was awful. But being out there in that, I wouldn't have been anywhere else, because I started to see new things from the sidelines, and I started to have a different kind of appreciation for the sport and for the community, as opposed to being so, you go to a race and you're so singularly focused on yourself and your performance and how you're going to do and whether or not you're going to stand on top of that podium. But when you're off to the sidelines and you can actually like take everything in and see the joy in other people and see their accomplishments, whether they're finishing first or like dead last, victory and winning means something different to everyone else. So for me, actually, as uncomfortable as it was to be at a lot of these races this year, it was so fulfilling, and is actually the number one thing that I would tell people to do if they're injured, is don't shut yourself off from that community. Like just don't, because you'll have a new appreciation when you come out the other side.
Yeah. And also, I suppose as well, it's almost nice to give back and see it from the other side, from the volunteers' perspective, from the people who don't participate in the races, but they're the partners, the boyfriends, the girlfriends who come along and support the people doing the races. And I think people would be, incredibly grateful that you were there cheering them on, because sometimes it's all it takes is somebody to say a good word, keep on going, you're doing well, you're smashing it, to give you that added encouragement to move forward. So,
oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I went to World's Toughest Mudder, 2 weeks ago, and I stood there on the start line and just gave high fives and hugs to everyone as they came through lap after lap. And to me, it was, it's almost as fulfilling to me now as it's like standing on top of that podium. So it's so cool.
Absolutely. So 2017, what are your...
Yes.
I don't want to say your comeback year, but no, we'll forget all that. But what would you like to see happen?
I'm trying to. I just want to get back into. This is the longest I've ever been off. I've been out an entire season, and so I think for me, it's kind of reinvigorated that drive to get back out there. And so I really, I'll be back for World's Toughest Mudder is really my race every single year that I absolutely dearly love. And I don't, schedule is kind of up in the air. I'll be doing the standard like obstacle racing circuits. And I really wanted, I started to get into more of the ultra running scene this past year. And that was stymied, my Western States stuff was stymied by the fracture. So we'll see. Things are, right now I'm just really going to be appreciative of anything that I can do. So I haven't really made firm plans, because as soon as I start making firm plans, I realize that I can start to push too much too quickly. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it though.
Do you feel that you always seem like the type of person who would put, no matter what other people say, whatever people do, that you put pressure on yourself? And I don't know if it's just like a female thing that you just apply more pressure. And can you feel yourself doing that, or are you trying to like almost keep the pressure off?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that I'm the most competitive with myself. I'm not really I don't mind being like beat by other people, I hate beating myself. So I think for me, I try and like keep the pressure off in terms of like having a firm date of this is my race debut again, after injury. Just because I know that if I put that pressure on myself, then I'm going to like set myself up for like crossing a line of, like pushing through nagging injuries or things like that and setting myself up for failure. So I guess I try and, kind of keep some stuff close to my chest just to keep myself in check. Cause the thing that actually makes me really good at these obstacle races and these long endurance events is also the thing that makes me really prone to injuring myself. And that's the ability to like withstand the pain and suffer through things. So I'm learning that as I'm getting older.
No, that's absolutely awesome. And finally, what would be your words of advice for women out there listening who have maybe been thinking, should I do an obstacle course race? Should I give it a go? Should I try it? But I've got a full-time career. How am I going to balance it? What are your top tips?
Yeah. Honestly, the best thing to do is just sign up. And just say, because you can sit there with like decision, like going over in your head, like, should I do this? Should I not? The best way to go out and do your first obstacle course race is with friends or with other people, because then you'll have other people. Like, it's a very social type of sport if you want it to be. You can have other people helping you over the obstacles, things like that. Sign up. Don't put any pressure on yourself, because there's a huge learning curve. And I have a lot of friends who are like very accomplished, say marathon runners, they're Olympic trials qualifiers. They go out of their first obstacle race and they get annihilated, and then they're like, oh, this isn't for me. It's a very steep learning curve, but once you catch on, like, then you're golden. So I always say, like, sign up, go have fun out on the first one with friends and whatever. Don't put any pressure on yourself, and then go from there, because you're going to fail things, it's going to be a completely brand new experience. And so that's the best way, I think, to approach it.
Absolutely. And don't be scared of failure. It's just a learning curve.
Exactly.
Oh, Amelia, now where is the best place for people to learn more about you, and where are you on social media or in the web?
Yeah. So I'm probably the most active. You can find me on Twitter. It's at Amelia Boone. Instagram, I'm on arboone11. And then my website, you can find me at ameliabooneracing.com. So those are primarily where I am around. So I not always tweeting about things related to sports, sometimes relating to, Pop-Tarts and other non sequiturs, but it's all in the fun. So
no, that's absolutely awesome. Amelia, thank you so much for coming on Tough Girl Podcast and sharing your...
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure just to learn more about your background, your experiences, that mental resilience, the obstacle courses, then all of the training and advice and top tips. It's been absolutely awesome to learn more about it.
Thank you.
Hello tribe, how are we all doing? I hope we are getting into the Christmas spirit. I've just been listening back to the episode. How many times do I say the word awesome? Quite a few times, I think. So I'm going to have to try and find a new word to show my appreciation and how excited I am. So awesome is going to be shelved, I think, for a little bit. So a couple of shout outs. If you like the Tough Girl podcast, then go and check out Dirt in Your Skirt, especially if you like obstacle course racing. So it's run by Margaret, and I can't pronounce her surname, which is so embarrassing. Schluckler, who is amazing. She's going to be coming on the Tough Girl podcast and sharing her story. But Dirt in Your Skirt, it's a relatively new podcast that's been going. I think she's about 20 odd episodes in now, which is super exciting, but well worth listening to. I'm also on episode 18, where I talk about when I did my first obstacle race, which was one of the original ones, the original Tough Guy, held in Wolverhampton one very cold winter back in 2010, maybe 2011. But a very, very fun experience. Nothing like these 24-hour races that Amelia's been talking about, which sound incredible. I might have to add that one onto my list of things to do. I want to do a couple of shout outs to the awesome, oh my God, I've done it again, but a couple of shout outs to the amazing women in the Tough Girl tribe, especially to Ali Bradford, who was getting very, very fun and festive over Christmas when she dressed up as a sparkly Christmas turkey. Absolutely love the photos, and thank you for tagging me in your Instagram post. She's also written a blog post about it, which you can read more about at lemonlaces2016blog.wordpress.com. So well done, Ali. It's great to see you doing that. Can't wait to see what your next challenge is going to be. Now, if you haven't heard of lilywild.com, go and check it out. It's a new company set up by Adelaide Good-Eve, who is also a member of the Tough Girl tribe, and she recently just shared an article which was really, really lovely, called 9 Adventurous Women Who've Inspired Us in 2016. And it's full of explorers that have inspired and motivated Adelaide to continue to push outside of her comfort zone. I hope I'm saying your name right. I do apologise if I'm getting it wrong, but it's well worth reading. So make sure you go and check out lilywild.com. I think if you like Tough Girl challenges, you'll like Lily Wild as well. Now, for those people out there who are thinking, what am I going to do for 2017? Make sure you continue to listen to the Tough Girl podcast, or go back and listen to previous episodes, because you will get inspiration. And when you come to set your goals for 2017, don't worry about what other people are doing, what goals they're setting. Just focus on you and what you want to do. If that's your first 5K, my mum that's going to be one of her goals for 2017. I'm making it public, so she has to go and do it. So my mum is 63 years old. She's recently just started running. and she's going to do her first 5K in January. So I'll have to make sure I keep you all updated on how her running and training and everything is going. But she's doing super well. I'm going to try and get her on the podcast as well to tell you a little bit more about her running story or her start into running. So a big hello to Jess Adset, who is currently traveling around Southeast Asia, which I am so jealous about. 10 months over in Southeast Asia, Australia and New Zealand sounds incredible. So I hope you're having an amazing time and taking advantage of all the incredible opportunities that are coming your way. But yeah, a massive thank you again to all my patrons. I massively appreciate it. I got such a shock the other day. I woke up in the morning, and obviously the first thing I do is I grab my phone and I check my emails, and I had 3 emails from Patron from three new patrons, and I was literally like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. So I think that's why I've had such an awesome day, really, because I know that you guys are supporting me, and it's making such a difference having this money come in every single month. So please do go check out Patreon, patreon.com. And again, all the links are on the website, toughgirlchallenges.com. If you're not a member of the Tough Girl Tribe, I talk about it on pretty much every episode, but we're a closed Facebook group purely for the listeners of the Tough Girl podcast. I created it for you guys so you could connect with other listeners, and you could find inspiration, motivation. You can ask questions. You can share your wins. You can share your successes and know that people get it and understand. And equally, you can share your failures when things don't go according to plan and what you've learned from them, because it is all about getting feedback. It's not failure, it is feedback. And especially as someone who's dealt with failure recently after losing my boxing match, it's it's a message to take away with you that sometimes you've got to put yourself out there, you've got to step into the ring, you've got to try, you've got to give it a go. And I don't regret doing what I did, and I learned a lot from that experience, from that failure. But it's all about taking the feedback and learning from it and how you can apply that to future challenges. I've got some incredible women coming up on the Tough Girl podcast. Jenny Tuff is coming up. Elise Downing will be coming up at the end of the month. Ali Bradford will be sharing her story of cycling from South Wales all the way over to Chamonix. Ali is from ithinksports.com, and it was the lady who interviewed me a couple of weeks ago for the Tough Girl Extra. So you'll probably recognise Ali's voice as well. But really, really good to get her back on the podcast and just to find out more about what she's learned about her specific challenges. So tons and tons of just incredible episodes coming up. And we've also got the 7 women in 7 challenges coming up at the start of the year. That episode is going to be coming out on the 1st of January. And with these 7 women, you are going to be able to follow along and learn more about their story. Thank you again for all your incredible support. And I can't wait to listen to you next Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. If you haven't already, please, please, please hit that subscribe button. Please write a review. If you enjoy the podcast, it takes 2 minutes. Just tell your friends about it. Tell your family about it. Let's help to spread the word, because one of my other big goals for 2017, I've already shared one a couple of weeks ago, is that I'm going to be donating my hair to Princess Little Trust, or Little Princess Trust. I'm going to be donating my hair to this children's cancer charity. And what they do is they take the hair and create wigs for children who've lost their hair. So that's going to be one of my goals in 2017. I just want to get my hair a lot longer. So it's currently almost down to my elbow, but once it passes my elbow, that's when it'll be given the chop. My other big goal is for the podcast, which I'm going to share now as well, is in 2017, I want to reach 500,000 downloads. I have no idea if this is possible. I don't know how long it will take me, but like anything, you've got to have a goal which is going to stretch you, which is going to challenge you, and which is going to push you and make you dig deeper. And I'm going to be doing everything that I can in 2017 to reach that goal of 500,000 downloads. And I'd love for you to be part of this journey, and I'd love for you to help me reach this target and to reach that many individuals around the world. We're already listened to in 152 countries. I'd love to be listened to in more countries. So thank you again for your continued support. And if I can ever do anything to help you or support you, then please don't hesitate to get in contact. You can reach me through my website, toughgirlchallenges.com. You can send me an email, sarah@toughgirlchallenges.com. And you can also send me a tweet @_tough_girl. That is all. But guys, thank you so much again. Have a wonderful week. And I will speak to you all next Tuesday. Take care. Lots of love. Bye.